Okay, hey, welcome again to the Guy Vancouver podcast. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and coming in to listen. Remember, all the thousands of you, but I know there's 10 for sure that always listen. I really thank you for that. Remember, tell your friends, your family, tell your mom, your stepmom, your stepdad, your second cousin, your third cousin, especially third cousins. They're going to like my show. Trust me on this. I've got to thank my sponsor, though, always. Our great sponsor is Get Ready Sound. If you're thinking of doing a podcast, music, anything that you want to be rich and famous, you got to see these guys. They know how to do it. Incredible crew. The sound is great. You do a podcast, you just walk in, sit down, everything's there. You say your stuff, and before you know it, you're the next Joe Rogan. So I'd like to thank them so much. We have an incredibly exciting guest today, a very good friend of mine that I've known for a few years, and we are going to be talking about something that's close, near and dear to my heart and very near and dear to her heart, and we are going to be talking about coffee today. And my friend is Stacy. Welcome, Stacy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We've been trying to do this for a while, but you're extremely busy. And I'm not extremely busy, but you're extremely busy. So I'm glad we could finally fit it in. She just come kind of here from straight work, and we're going to chill out, and we're going to talk a lot about coffee. We're going to talk about coffee in Vancouver, because Vancouver has a huge coffee scene, without a doubt, and coffee in general. Stacy's been doing a lot of traveling with the company that she works with now, so we'll probably chat a bit about where she's been and some of the cool places that she's seen. We're going to start off the show, though, today. I'm going to just talk about how I got started, my coffee journey, because it's without a doubt a coffee journey. Some people just like, I've been drinking coffee since I was 6 years old, and I love it, right? Where didn't happen to me like that. When I was younger, when I was like 19 years old, I was working with my old man plumbing, and regardless where we would 10 o'clock, time for a coffee break. And in Vancouver, in that time, that would have been 1979, 80s. Starbucks wasn't even in town yet. They didn't come into Vancouver until 1987. They were just little coffee shops. They were usually run by Asian people or Greek people. And, they had a bar and some booths, and you went and had coffee there. There was always coffee on. You had your lunches there. There were burgers or Chinese food or all sorts of things. And there was tons of those around Vancouver in those days. They are all gone now. They've been really taken over by the big coffee conglomerates. But, even then I wasn't drinking coffee. It was like, no, it's something I hadn't gotten into yet. The bitterness just didn't sit with me, Rhett. And then later on, I opened a rock climbing gym, and it was in a big warehouse. And so during the first winter, it was really cold in there. One of the guys that worked for me, he knew how to brew a cup of coffee, because I didn't even know how to brew a cup of coffee, right? And, we bought some, he brought in his coffee maker, and then we started drinking coffee. He would make a really strong dark brew, and then, put some nice cream in there and mix it up. It was kind of latte-ish, and yeah, that was palatable. I got used to it. As years went on, coffee was here and there, and then the biggest change happened is one day I was at one of my buddy's places, and it's kind of like not a junk store. Yeah, it's a junk store. And it was called Space Lab. And a young man had set up a little shop in there, like a little booth, 4 feet by 3 feet. And he was making like coffee. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'll have a coffee. Yeah, it's all down the rabbit hole from then. He started teaching me about, this came from one farm, from one guy at 1,200 meters. And then that was my introduction to really good coffee, and, not just this kind of weird roast. Oh, that's my phone talking to me. There you go. Be quiet. So his name was Eldritch, and he introduced me to really good coffee, and then I started drinking it all the time, and it was really cool. And then he was telling me, oh yeah, he's got some people, they're going to open this really swanky coffee shop, and I was like, oh, I'm excited. It took a while. It happened. It was called Harkin, and it was kind of in Japantown. It was super awesome, and that's where I met Stacy. Stacy was their head roaster, and it was fabulous. Like the roast that she created then just took me to another level of like what coffee could be and the different flavor profiles and all sorts of things. And, I've been stuck there now. That place has come and gone, which it's sad, but that's just the way life is sometimes, but there's lots of places in town that are doing great stuff. I do hang out at Prototype. That's That's where I like to be. So that's kind of my journey into coffee, where I've gotten to now. Now, I like really good coffee, but you ever see like on YouTube or in, any social where those guys have spent like $8,000 on the coolest coffee machines in their apartments, and they have those little wire things.
Yeah.
What are those? Do you know what those are called?
Like a distributor?
Yeah. like that's crazy. But that's, everyone that I watch of those, that's why they do it, because they just love it, right? They love that whole part of it. I just like good coffee. I've just got to the point where I grind my own and then French press. That's it. So it's nice and fresh, sealed. I grind and then French press, because that's just way too much work, and I'm way too lazy in the mornings to. And if I really want coffee like that, you know what? I really enjoy going out to have coffee like that, because I like the experience. And, the people that work in these coffee shops, and you get to chat with them and stuff like that, right? So that's where I end up drinking all my coffee, right? Now, your journey, I don't know where it started, but, it's an incredible journey. You're, a master roaster. You've won, I don't know how many competitions. When I looked you up, lots and stuff. So tell us how you got into, how did you get here?
How did I get here?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a good thing we have about an hour.
There you go. Well, I'll make sure I'll push you along. So we want to talk about a lot.
We want to talk about a lot. I started working in cafes in the late 90s. So this is before coffee got good.
Yeah.
This is still, I was still brewing like Irish cream drip, that came out of like a portion pack. So I would rip open the like cellophane pack and like dump it in, and you'd have like your Dutch mocha, your orange crush,
Sweet,
all of that kind of stuff. So I started working in cafes, continued to work in cafes through university. And then in university, I started working for a coffee shop called Salt Spring Coffee Company.
Heard of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So they were still at that time roasting on Salt Spring Island, and they had just opened a little kiosk at the ferry terminal.
Oh, yeah. I remember that, actually. Yeah.
And that was kind of the beginning of, we're getting into more specialty. We're getting into I was working with fair trade organic. So no more flavored coffees.
Cool.
Starting to kind of get in, and then into single origin coffee. And we had a green buyer at that point.
Okay, let me hold you there for 1 second. Just for people that may not know, single origin, what does that mean?
So it comes from one country.
Yeah.
We're not getting blends.
Yeah.
You're not your house blend. Now you're getting coffees from Ethiopia or Brazil or Colombia.
Because say like you're buying like, a can of coffee at Costco. That's kind of a blend. They might have a million different beans in there. So this is just from one country.
One country.
And sometimes one farm.
And sometimes one farm, sometimes one producer, right? These days it can go all the way down to the producer, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just really cool to get a coffee from like one country.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay, this is going to taste like blueberries. I'm like, yeah, right. Coffee tastes like coffee. Everything kind of just tasted like that generic coffee flavor.
Yeah.
And I had this coffee and it did taste like blueberries.
Yeah. That's amazing. I know, it's like,
once you get if you do like specialty coffee, you do have that coffee and you never believe the person who gave it to you.
Yeah.
You're like, heck no. So that's
well, I remember you used to, I'd come into the shop and you'd be like, oh, Kelly, you got to try this. It's got a really like chocolatey flavor. And I know you kind of like that chocolatey this and that. And, in the beginning, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. It's like, it's coffee. And then like you said, it's like, that's what turned me on to drinking better coffee, because I've been a chef for, most of my life and cooking. And so I really love food and flavors but I love food and flavors that are what I call terroir. So, I love the food of the West Coast because it's fresh. Fresh salmon there's nothing better. A fresh Dungeness crab, there's nothing better. Bringing a lobster from back east doesn't do much for me because and that's what was coffee. Coffee was okay before. It was like, oh, that's a cool thing, but it wasn't this like terroir of like, well, you know what, Kelly, this is coming from this area and it has this flavor. And then you would make it for me. And it did. It was like, okay, oh, no, this is bullshit. This is why I'm paying $6 for a cup of coffee. It wasn't. And that's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so continue. That's what I do, interrupt.
No. It's all good. But that was the really cool thing, is learning that, okay, so coffee's from Ethiopia. They've got a lot of black tea. They've got a lot of blueberry. They've got all these like cool notes, like maybe some bergamot. So it was really neat to see that. Then I kind of continued to work for Salt Spring for a while. I finished university. I graduated. I graduated and became an archaeologist. So I did do that for a little while. But archaeology in BC is very cold. It's very wet.
Yes.
So in between, after a contract, I had the opportunity to help or work at a coffee shop in my hometown. And I come from a very small town. It's a farming, fishing village. So, or I guess at that time, I think it's past village. It's at a town now.
There you go.
So it was pretty ambitious for Rob to be opening Stir, which he wanted a specialty coffee shop. And
Right.
people are like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
People want coffee.
Yeah.
So I chose to go there and to start working there. And I did. And that's where I started to compete. And that's kind of, that's where the bug starts, right? So I did my first barista competition.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because, again, people that are like, I have all sorts of different kinds of people, like third cousins that listen to this show. And the first time I ever heard that, I'm going to be honest, I just laughed. What? What do you compete? Like, do you throw cups at each other and see who can dodge it? So you got to explain what a barista competition. I know it could take 3 hours because I've heard the whole stories and go, oh my God. But encapsulate, like, what is a barista competition? Because they're huge now. I mean, if you win the World Barista Championship, you're made it.
Yeah,
And you're making coffee for Brad Pitt.
You've made it.
Yeah.
I mean, the World Barista Champion from last year is actually right now on a world tour.
There you go.
Like, how wild is that?
Yeah. So what does that involve? What does a competition involve then?
Every year, there's basically the coffee Olympics.
Okay.
And then barista competition is like, so you make 4 espressos, you make 4 milk-based beverages, and then you make 4 signature drinks. And while you're doing all of that, you're serving 4 judges. You have a head judge who's watching everything you do, 2 technical judges who are watching everything you do. And then you're basically giving a TED talk about your coffee and like whatever theme you have chosen, for your presentation.
There you go.
And you've got 15 minutes.
You have 15 minutes
to do all of that.
Holy cow. Now, here's a question. So how many people would attend that?
There's
competitors.
Competitors. At the time when I did it, we had 4 regional competitions. Okay. So you could have up to 16 competitors in each region competing to go to the
Worlds.
Well, for Canada, it would be 16 in each region competing to go to the nationals where the top 16 would compete to go to Worlds.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people doing it.
A lot of people doing it.
And I can see, though, like, because my wife does not drink coffee, at all. Like, she loves the smell, like everyone, when I make it. And then every once in a while, I'll get like one that I think, okay, you'll like this one. And then she tastes it and her face just goes crazy. Yeah. So, and it's weird because she's Asian, and that's not weird because she's Asian, but that is weird. But she likes really interesting tastes like bitter and sweet and all those things. Like, man, so there's no coffee. And then she's like, I've taken her, she came to Harkin a whole bunch of times and stuff. And she would just be like, laugh at me later and going, you guys are just like pompously crazy. I'm like, sometimes can be like construed that way that it is. I said, but this is what I'll tell you. Everyone that I've met in that industry is super nice people. Because it is really like, come on, 12 coffees in 15 minutes, 13 judges, all these, you think, what a bunch of, but it isn't like that, is it?
No.
Good people.
It's good people.
Yeah, it is. It's just, it's so interesting that way because from the outside, you can look at it and go, what are these wackos doing? Like, do they realize there's the rest of the world? But it isn't like that. Super good people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I mean, a lot of the time when you are competing, right? It's, I mean, I like to compete. I'm a competitive person. Cool. I'm, can't do all the sports that I used to do. So this is kind of an outlet for that competition thing. Yeah. But it also gives me the opportunity to share what I'm excited about, or to also if there's a producer or a farm or a country that is doing like things that I think are really cool, it gives me the opportunity to share it, right? It's like...
Cool. Okay, so you go to your first competitions, you win them all. You're the queen of coffee, as I like to say.
I wish it went like that.
But you won quite a few.
I mean,
looked up
I
your
have.
stats. Yep.
I mean, I came in, well, I made it to nationals on my first go.
Cool.
And then I did come in last at nationals. But, you know, you learn. And it was wild just to see the level of competition when you get to there. And I mean, I was coming from a super small town. I didn't have like all these other competitors had big teams,
like backing them up,
like backing them up and helping them taste their coffee. I had my mom, you know, awesome. So like we were just not quite at that level yet, you know, like, but it did give me the opportunity to see, okay, so this is what it's like to get there. And, you know, this is what I need to do if I want to succeed. And then, you know, I did a few other competitions. I ended up switching over to doing coffee and good spirits. So that's a coffee cocktail competition
like
instead.
With booze?
With booze,
I want to go to that one. Right? I want to be the judge,
So for that one, you serve two hot beverages and 2 cold beverages.
So like cold coffee with?
Yeah, cold coffee with, you know, your booze. Like you're making 2 cocktails. Okay. So a hot cocktail and a cold cocktail.
Oh, cool.
And then kind of doing exactly the same thing, like a TED Talk. But I just I really like making signature drinks. So for me, that was like taking my favorite part of the barista competition and just really focusing on that.
On cool drinks that you're creating.
On cool drinks that I'm creating, but still getting to like talk about producers, talk about coffee and I just thought it was more fun. So I ended up kind of focusing on coffee and good spirits a little bit more. Definitely had a lot more success in coffee and good spirits. I'm still the Canadian runner-up for coffee and good spirits. Unreal.
That's excellent.
So that's kind of been my passion. I mean, I've done a lot of other competitions as well.
Yeah, that's unreal. So then I know obviously, so then you're doing the competitions and you're working for Salt Spring, but are you roasting for them?
No.
So then, because when I met you, you were roasting. You were sitting on the chair, doing all the and like coming out. Smell that, Kelly, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's amazing! What the fuck are you doing in there?" Like
when I went to work at Stir, and then after my first barista competition, a customer of mine came into the shop, and he was like, "Have you ever thought about roasting coffee?" And I was like, "No, I never thought about that at all." And he was like, "Well, you should go meet my friend. He helps out at this coffee shop roastery in the downtown east side called East Van Coffee Roasters."
I've heard of it.
And they are a nonprofit organization that helps women get out of at-risk situations and get back into the workforce.
Awesome.
Essentially. And it's, you know, understanding of like what they need to get there too, right? It's a really fantastic organization. So I ended up going there and kind of like just knocking on the door. I'm like, who am I looking for? And, you know, this gentleman in the back is like, "Oh, hi." And so I just kind of sat there with him one day and we just hung out and just kind of talked all day. And I just watched him, you know, roast. And I kind of got to see what it was all about. And I was like, well, it's hard. But I was like, it's not that hard. It's not that, you know.
It's obviously something that lit a spark in you because you know that's the natural evolution. If you're doing all this other stuff, it's like this is where it actually all begins to put that creative input into it. Is the roasting.
So I did that with him one day, and then he was like, "Well, I do this every Monday. I think it was every Monday. Do you want to come back next Monday?" So I came back next Monday,
there you go.
And the Monday after that, and the Monday after that. And I did that for quite a while. I volunteered my time, and by learning to roast, you know, I kind of got free roasting lessons. And in turn, I volunteered a little bit at East Van Roasters as well and helped them with their barista programs because I just really love what they do.
Yep.
And after that, I ended up working for a company called Outtread Coffee and Tea. They're a large macro roaster out in Tilbury. Delta.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, I think it was Delta. There you go.
In Delta.
Cool.
So I went and I started roasting 1,000,000 pounds of coffee a year.
1,000,000 pounds of coffee. Okay, so on that note, people, on that note, I turned my phone on. Here we go for crazy coffee stats. Because I looked them up today, and I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm an old man. Okay, how many cups of coffee in America are drunken in a day? 4 million cups of coffee. That is a lot of coffee. How much coffee is grown worldwide? Okay, this stat's crazy. It is 169 million bags of 60 kilograms. Tons of coffee. Coffee is depending on when it is, because sometimes it's really high, the second or first largest commodity traded in the world. What else? Some crazy facts. Oh, how about this one? Because we will be talking about Vancouver. How many coffee shops do you think are in Vancouver? And this is recent. This is 2023.
Gosh, I have no idea.
780.
Whoa, really? I was going to go for like 300 or 400.
I know. And that's just Vancouver, because I couldn't get a stat on the lower mainland.
Uh-huh.
So that's just Vancouver. So coffee is very popular in Vancouver.
Yes.
And even there's some stats in here, because I looked up cities with most popular coffee, and it goes obviously a little bit by population, but they were trying to adjust for that. So it's like Seattle, New York, Vancouver.
Really?
Yeah, Vancouver is number 3, sometimes number 2 as one of the bigger coffee cities in the world. And I know I think Eldridge had been in Australia brewing and stuff like that. And he is they have a huge coffee culture down there. And I said, well, Vancouver, I don't know if you remember, but do you remember when Starbucks had 2 Starbucks on Robson, kitty corner?
Yeah.
How ridiculous was that? And they were both always busy. The other thing too, so I started drinking coffee, and Starbucks wasn't around yet. Starbucks has been in Vancouver since 1987. So quite a while actually now. And I looked up the stat on how many places they had, but I don't care. It's Starbucks. I love them and hate them. They're everywhere. So sometimes when I need a coffee, I got to go in there and get something that I like. But it's not what I'm used to if I'm drinking at Prototype or stuff like that, right? Which I really enjoy, right? So then you're getting roasting, and like I said, you do these things. Obviously, you go through a few places, and then I meet you at Harkin.
Yeah.
And you had a really cool little roasting setup there, and you guys were roasting stuff for that coffee shop, man. It was crazy. But it didn't make it for a lot of different reasons, but the pandemic was one of them, which really sucked because it was a great place. And then you moved on to what do you do now?
I am the cupping lab manager for Swiss Water Decaf.
What is a cupping lab?
Cupping lab manager. So what I do is I do all of the not all of the quality control, but quality control kind of on the tasting side. Okay. Mostly of all of the coffee that we buy.
Awesome.
So I taste all of the coffees that we buy before they leave origin. So before they leave the country they were grown in. So that's called a pre-shipment sample.
So do you have to go there?
No, they get sent to me.
See.
I wish I could
go to everyone.
Go to everyone. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And then once the coffee arrives here in North America, I get another sample. So I taste that again to make sure that it's up to our standards. And then we also test for some things like moisture in the coffee, water activity in the coffee, and then also the density of the coffee. Mm-hmm. Because when coffee is decaffeinated, obviously, it goes through a lot of changes.
Yeah. Now, today, because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I knew you were working for them, and funny enough, our studio is 4 or 5 blocks away from where their factory was for years. Ever since I was a kid, I drove by it. Okay, so big sign on it, Swiss Water. And I knew what it was. It was a decaffeinated coffee company, and drove by it for years and years and years, all the time, right? And then I noticed it was closing down, and then you got the job, and I was like, oh, you're going to be working right out here, right? And then you were like, no, they've made a big, new, beautiful one out in Delta, which is great, right? Yeah. But, for people that don't know, because again, the coffee world is so interesting. Swiss Water is the top of the line when it comes to this whole decaffeinated world, because and I know it's proprietary and you don't know how to, they probably don't tell you, but you guys just use water. So other ones use chemicals.
Yeah. So
That's disgusting.
Swiss Water is the only certified organic or consistently certified organic
There you go.
company that decaffeinates coffee. And the way that is yes. So essentially it's water. So what happens is we use a green coffee extract, and that's all the water soluble compounds found in coffee minus the caffeine.
Okay.
So then once the coffee with the caffeine is introduced to that green coffee extract, which is basically hungry for caffeine, right? It pulls all the caffeine out of the coffee through osmosis. And that's how, that's the quick answer.
That's crazy. That's cool,
as to how coffee is decaffeinated.
And then so I guess then you guys, this company then decaffeinates coffees for other brands. Like I think I read, but it didn't say too much, but it said a few in there, and I think it said that it did Tim Hortons for a while, or this one or that one. So you're decaffeinating coffee for large brands, medium brands, and everyone.
Everyone.
That's crazy cool.
Yeah, we have our own line.
Okay.
So we do have like a Swiss Water line that is our own, and then we also decaffeinate for a whole bunch of big to small companies. Cool. To be totally honest, like huge. Like Tim's.
Yep. That's cool. Because I always get good questions from my wife, because again, she goes, oh, Swiss Water. She goes, you're going to have to ask her why it's called Swiss Water. But I already looked it up, but I was like, very interesting, because it is a Swiss company.
Yeah.
But it's all in Canada.
So the technology is all,
Yeah, that's crazy good.
It's a publicly traded company.
Yeah. But out of Switzerland, and they have their factories here.
No. It's Canadian.
Oh, it's Canadian.
Yeah.
No, see, it's like, that's awesome.
It's totally Canadian. It's just the technology. So the technology was invented in
Switzerland.
Yeah.
You got to love the Swiss, them and their watches and their. Now, my only question would be, because, I'm getting on, like I'm 61 now. So, I try not to drink coffee much later than 12 or 1. Now, sometimes I do, and it doesn't bother me, but sometimes I do, and I'm like, I'm up. But then I'll just drink whiskey, right? So then I'll go to bed. But I've still not a big fan of the decaffeinated coffee, because I do drink coffee because I do feel that caffeine and I do enjoy it. Like some people are like, oh, I don't like it. I'm like, that's one of the reasons I do drink coffee. I feel that buzz. It wakes me up. It gets my mind running. And funny facts. Okay, here's some funny facts that you may not know. So my daughter, one of them, not the one that's here, my youngest one, was born very premature. And so was my grandson. A weird story. They were both born on the same day, the same amount premature. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
And in the hospital, they give them caffeine, right, for their heart. It helps them, especially in the morning when the preemies sleep. They can fall into an incredibly deep sleep. And the nurse would come in. And I'm having my coffee for the kids. She goes, yep. Caffeine, and then their heart rate goes up and they get active and they wake up.
Oh wow.
I know. And I'm like, wasn't caffeine bad? She goes, no, it's bad if you drink so much of it that your eyeballs are popping out of your head. But no, she goes, we use it on all of our preemies get caffeine. I'm like, it's just just pure clean caffeine, nothing weird, it's natural. So isn't that, that's the thing, because a lot of times you hear people like, oh, caffeine, it's bad for you. I'm like, well, I don't know. Huh. It's a natural product. How bad can it be? Like anything's bad. Whiskey is bad for you if you drink 10 bottles a day. But if you have a whiskey every week, it's not a bad thing for you. So I think coffee sometimes, not right now, but like, I remember in the 80s and 90s, it was getting a bad rap there of like, oh, coffee's not that good for you, jittery and all this crap and stuff like.
Oh, if you're drinking 10 cups a day, it's not going to be good for you, right?
If you're drinking 10 cups of anything a day, it's not going to be good for you, right? So, yeah, that's crazy. That's cool. Yeah, I know. I looked up that company. It's a very interesting company. And, it's like I remember when Harkin was closing and I was talking to you. And, obviously, I was sad, but you were sad, too. I was like, oh, this is, a great little gig. But then you're like, yeah, I got this great job at this company, and it's like, I'm just lucked out or whatever, and like, and you've been doing it now for what, 2 or 3 years?
2 years now.
2 years, yeah. So like good on you. Like it worked out well.
Yeah.
To be cupping manager. I
Yeah.
love those. The coffee's like, I used to be a rock climber, right? I had a rock climbing gym, you know that. And climbing has its own language too, like a lot of weird words that people look at, what are you saying? So coffee's like that too, like cupping.
Oh, yeah. No,
And like all sorts of weird phrases that you're like, what are they saying, right?
I just had, yesterday we had a bunch of chemical engineer students from UBC come through, and they came into the lab for like a tasting. And it's just so funny, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm using all this terminology and they're all kind of just like looking at me like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so who actually knows what cupping means?
Yeah.
I'm like, put your hand up. And everybody's like, I'm like, all right, well, let's talk this through. Then, you don't have to act like you know what I'm talking about. You're here to learn.
Yeah.
But it was just so funny because they're like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's same with like in that whole, like that brewing world of like the guy that's doing the 5,000 home brew, every piece of equipment's got a certain name and, the pressure and the crema and all these words. Right? I've learned them over the years because I've hung out at too many coffee shops for too many hours. But yeah, it's got its whole language that the regular world kind of is like, what are they saying? Right. Which is, very funny. It's cute. So yeah. So now you're working at Swiss, but what I wanted to talk about too is like, I know like what interests me too about coffee is that, and like a lot of the things that I like or I get involved in, there is a culture around it. Right. And, without a doubt, Vancouver has a very strong coffee culture, right? There's not many places you go in Vancouver or even the Lower Mainland now. I was out in Chilliwack the other day, and I found a great coffee shop making great coffee, right? So that's the interesting thing. What have you seen over the years of you being involved in making it too? You're behind the counter. You're making it. You're making the Joe for me. Hey, making my Joe. Can you make my Joe, Stacy? I need my Joe. How have you seen the change, good and bad?
Ah, man. I think, yeah, there's been so much change. I think seeing like this, like kind of the switch, like at first, like seeing more kind of like organic or fair trade. And I mean, those certifications aren't always super important, but they were, I think, important in the beginning.
Yep.
Is to like make sure that we were paying producers more money, right? I've been to a few coffee producing countries, and farming coffee is like one of the hardest things like ever.
Yeah.
It's grown on a mountain, and in certain places you're like hiking up and down the mountain to pick these little berries.
Yeah.
Like, it's
crazy.
a hard job. So I think just once we realized we have to pay more for coffee, and unfortunately a lot of coffee is traded on the C market, and people do take advantage of that. But specialty coffee has kind of like elevated that, so we are paying more, which I think is huge. And then you get people behind the counter. And that's the other thing is because now I have to convince you, right? I have to convince you to pay $6 for a coffee, which is super hard.
Yeah.
So being able to share those stories and to like tell, it's being connected at origin, even, and as a barista, you don't really get that opportunity to do that like ever.
Yeah.
So it's sharing the knowledge. It's all of that. So I think that has been a really special thing. And I think we have so many more specialty coffee shops popping up and
Unreal. Yep.
and being able, like I did a coffee tasting at the beginning of the year at Nemesis. And I got in a bunch of coffee from Colombia. And what I did was I actually got the importers and producers and the wide world of Zoom.
There you go, yeah.
But, we couldn't all go to Colombia, but I could bring Colombia to us.
Yeah.
So I got them on the computer, and we tasted their coffees and we talked with them. And I think there's like been this really amazing kind of connection. And I think, you feel better about paying more.
Definitely.
When there is like a connection and you're like, this is a real person. It's not just the can of coffee on the,
I think that's really important
shelf.
too, because there is a farmer, but like I said, it's hard, but not only just the farmer. It's usually their whole family. It's what they do. What supports their whole family, and they love it. They're not just doing it because, oh well, I'm just going to do it as a job, because it's really hard. They're doing it because they love that product. It's what grows in their country. They're proud of it. And I think it's like me and my son. We're really into cigars, and I know it's like I'm going to say, oh, it's really similar, but it is really similar. We only smoke single origin and family brands and things like that. So. And they're out of Central America or, all these other countries, no Cubans, because, that's just factory cigars. And it is all about origin. And my son works for a podcasting company about cigars, and that's exactly what they do. I mean, they get on Zoom and they're talking to the guy that's growing the leaf, and then talking to the guy that's rolling the cigar, and then talking to the guy who may be, we've smoked some that have been in their family for 10 generations, 10 years, 10 generations, who is designing the cigar, and it's amazing. And you feel so much better. And yes, we're paying a little bit more for those cigars, but in my mind, the same with the coffee or any food product I eat, like all that kind of stuff, well worth it. Yeah. I want to support that world of the industry, because it's never going to be supported by everyone. It's not possible, and I've made a good living all my life doing jobs that made good living, so I can afford to do that too. And so if I can afford it, that's what I like to spend my money on. It doesn't bother me to pay $6 for a cup of coffee, or we work in cigars. We always work in American money because that's what we have to buy them all in. But like a normal cigar in the States is like $8. And, I have no problem spending $15 or $20 on a cigar that's like very single origin, coming from one family that has a history and an incredible story, because it's just, it makes it that much better. And same with the coffee. When I was at Harkonnen drinking, I mean, you guys introduced me to all of that on the labels, where it came from, the elevation that was grown, and how it was, I don't know if the right word is produced, but how it was like fermented and then sun dried or all those things, right? And that just even got me more into coffee, because I really love that, right? I love going to Steveston and getting the fish off the guy on the boat. Where'd you catch this? He goes, oh, we just got it outside the freezer. Oh my God, that's crazy. Or we caught it up coast, right? And and I'm supporting him and his little kids running around on the boat. It just makes me feel better about spending my money.
I think that's one of the really great things about Vancouver is we have so many, not just like specialty coffee shops, but like little restaurants and little, like all of these things that are run by people who really care.
Yes.
Like that are putting so much effort into their craft, right? And
agree.
You feel so much better about.
And I wish, now I'm not saying that they don't. There are a lot of people like me and like you that do it too, right? I just wish more people would get that mindset. It doesn't mean that you have to go to that restaurant every day or every month. It's a specialty type thing, right? But yeah, it is. And the quality of the food, or the quality of the coffee, or the quality of anything that you get, then if you know those people to boot, is that much better. It's like going, when I was a kid, I'd go camping with my old man, and when he made coffee on that percolator, and even today, nothing smells better than that percolated coffee out camping, because there's a story to it. We'd be out fishing, and it was like, and he'd make it, and it was just terrible. Like, I'd taste it, and I'm like, this is, but that smell is still in my mind. It's still in that kind of whole thing I really love about Vancouver. And I've got to travel quite a bit, and you have too, but I've been to some places where that isn't as prevalent yet. It's coming.
Oh yeah.
It's coming everywhere, right? But it's just like, I love Vancouver. And funny that you mentioned it. Like, I just found the most incredible like Asian restaurant. So I can't tell you because it's too small, and then it'll get filled up. But me and my wife have been going there, and they've been there for 10 years, and I never even knew about them. And it only sits like 14 people. And it's all, and it like not even cooler, but it's all run by women, and they're all related, and they make just handmade noodles of loveliness. And it's like, The food is so delicious, but it's like, it's that bullshit line that it's made with love, but it really is. Like, the other day we went in and my wife was like, "Oh, can I get this?" No, you can't get today. It's not too good today. We don't have you were getting this. My wife's, okay, just good today. You eat this, you love it. And then my wife ate it, and oh my God, it's so delicious, right? So it's the whole thing too with coffee, right? That's why I like going to, the more specialty coffee shops like the Revolvers and, Prototype and all these ones, because there's a story behind that. The people that are working in there usually want to be there.
Yeah.
And they're making you a great cup of coffee, right? So, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like, a lot of coffee shops in this city, though, like 780 in Vancouver alone.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of coffee being made. Now, with your job, I know it's because I follow you on social. You have got to travel, though, quite a bit this last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where have you gone that's like really stood out there? You're like, wow, super cool coffee culture, or just a great place? Like,
oh my gosh. I would say it's such a hard question.
Just pick one. I mean,
just pick one. I know.
Or two or something.
Or two. I had the opportunity to go to Honduras at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I loved that. It was pretty crazy. Because again, like I flew into San Pedro Sula, which it's like one of the most dangerous countries or most dangerous cities in the world. And you kind of get that first like preconceived notion. You're like, okay, what am I getting myself into? Yeah. And actually I loved it. I said, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm going outside. I'm going outside of the hotel. Screw it.
But usually that's the way, isn't it?
It's just the way it is, right? And I didn't find any like specialty shops, but I did find some like really cute little shops. And then from there, we drove I was there for like a conference, but we drove to Copan, which is like, I think it's a National Heritage Site.
Okay.
So, just beautiful, like in the middle of Honduras. And, there's coffee farms and Mayan ruins and parrots flying overhead. And it's just,
amazing.
It's amazing. Like, and the hospitality and just, again, the country in general, Honduras was really beautiful. And, but it's just weird when you get that, like, you get that thing first. You're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's not usually me. It's somebody else being like, okay, you have to be careful, Stacy. You're traveling by yourself. You're a woman by yourself. And I'm like, I've been a woman by myself my whole life.
There you go. If you can't do it now, then whenever you're ever going to do it. Yeah, exactly. So,
but
that's cool.
Yeah, I really loved Honduras. It was really beautiful. And then again, just kind of, I've been to different farms in different countries, but this was kind of one of the first ones that was like more of like a shade grown farm. So that means kind of like it's shade grown. So it's like being like the coffee is grown like on a hill, like still with the forest around it. Like they haven't clear cut anything. Oh. Right. Crazy. So it's crazy. But that, like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh my God, these guys have to rot. Like they've got to walk up and down this mountain.
Crazy.
I get to go up the nice like walkway up because I'm just there to visit. Yeah. But like just thinking that, the people who come in there to pick these beans have got to come up and down this hill and like, oh my gosh, and carry this big bucket, right? Yep. That only gets heavier and heavier and heavier the fuller and fuller
every
it
bean
gets.
You put in, right?
Yeah.
I think that's too. It's like, I think just in North America in general, for everything that we consume, we just don't think. It's just as simple as that. We just don't think about where it really comes from. Like, and that's everything. Like, that coffee bean is taking a lot of labor and hard work by someone to get in your cup. And it doesn't matter where you drink it from, okay? It's Starbucks or Tim's or a specialty store. It's still taking a lot of work. Same with the clothing that we wear and everything. There isn't a thing that doesn't take a lot more work than we just, I try not to, and I know a lot of people don't, but we do just take for granted that it's so easy for us just to have a cup of coffee or buy this piece of clothing or these shoes and that. And we lose perspective on and why we've become such a consumer culture of that. It's just, there's a lot of hard work put into that, and we should appreciate it a lot more and not be so consumer oriented that we need, a pair of new jeans every month, because you don't, or, shoes, or these things are just, because it's, and I don't know how you change that, because everybody can't go to Honduras and see this guy. That's just not going to happen. But, I think that's why I enjoy like the specialty coffee stores. I think they at least try to tell you that, it's taken a lot of effort and not just them to get that coffee in your cup that you're really enjoying, right? And I think that's, really important, especially for coffee, because, it's just a, it's a luxury.
It's a luxury.
Yeah.
And I think it's really wild, like how as a society, we're willing to pay more for wine, or we're willing to pay more for whiskey.
Yep.
And just as much work goes into that cup of coffee.
For sure. Yeah, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And it's just, and I mean, it's coming, wine could be coming from the Okanagan. It's not really coming that far.
No, it's not coming far at all.
Like, we're so lucky to have such amazing, really, like the wine industry in BC is just blown, in Canada alone has just blown up.
Yep.
But, it's in this country, whereas like, these coffee beans are getting on a boat, and they're coming across the country or across the world.
Yeah, and a lot of, like I say, a lot of people in these countries working extremely hard, and like I say, fair trade now and everything is much better, and they're getting paid better. But they still live a hard life. It's like they live a modest life, and for us just to drink a great cup of coffee. Like I said, that's why I like going to those shops. I appreciate it more, and I try to respect it more. Sometimes I totally forget about it because it's a Sunday morning and I'm tired and I just want my cup of coffee and I want to scroll through my social. But when I'm doing stuff like that, I try to think about that. Like, that's like why I love to go to all the great restaurants that are run by local great people, like and that I get to know, right? And they appreciate it when I come in. They understand that, like, I could go anywhere and I could spend my money anywhere, and I want to spend it here because I like what you're doing, whatever it may be, farm to table. I'm not really big on that word, because Tony Bourdain said one time, well, where else is it going to come from? It all comes from a goddamn farm regardless, right? I'm like, yeah, that's true. But okay, a good farm, right? Or an organic farm, a place that the farmer's getting paid decently, that he can raise his kids and they can go to school. So, and I think coffee throughout the years, because coffee has a reputation of too, because it's, South American grown or African grown, governments have been corrupt and stole it and made millions from it. And, it's like the banana, right? They're called banana republics because, they make millions from it, and you own the bananas, you own the country. And coffee had a reputation like that for, especially in the early, like after World War II, I was reading, in the 50s and 60s and the 70s, coffee was just like drugs. It was a corrupt industry.
Oh, totally.
Run by corrupt governments, and just like, the farmers and all these people picking were basically slaves, and they were selling it as a huge commodity. So it's so much better now, and can always get better, I'm sure. But it makes me it's much easier to digest when I do pay my $6 for my cup of coffee, which I don't mind. I totally don't. I don't think it's that much. Like, I don't even worry about it. So that's cool. But that's the thing, Vancouver. The funny thing is, I'm kind of semi-retired now, doing this podcast and running the studio and doing all sorts of things. But, a few years ago when I was drinking at Harkin, I was drilling still, right? And I'd be gone for a while and stuff. And, we had to just drink Tim Hortons every morning. It was a double, big one to keep me going and stuff, right? But it's funny because, in northern BC and northern Alberta and all those places, that's it. That's Tim Hortons. And it's like, and they're busy. And, it's like, it's coffee and it's okay. It doesn't matter. I drank it, but it's coffee culture. They're full everyone is in there. Everyone from all those little towns, because it was always, I don't know why you worked in little towns, but yeah, everyone is in there, right? So, that coffee culture goes from, me going to, a fancy place, having a $6 coffee, and it's full, to Tim Hortons being full of all those regulars. And they're in there because they're having a cup of coffee and bullshitting with their friends every morning and whatever else Tim sells you, donuts, I think, yeah.
Donuts
and
sandwiches
and all that stuff, right? So, that it's all that coffee culture is more, I feel that it's bigger than people really give it credit for. Because, when you just say Tim's, it's just Tim's, but it isn't Tim's. It's coffee culture.
But the cool thing is Tim's has been a part of Canadian culture for so long. And there's actually in Hamilton where Tim Hortons originated, it's a brand new building, but there is actually a Tim Hortons museum above the Tim Hortons in Hamilton. And it's so cool just to see. And they've got all the old uniforms that, the cashiers and everything used to wear. Cool. And just to see, it's been a part of Canadian culture for so long.
Yep. Yeah, and like I said, the thing is, when we talk about, coffee culture, it's more like on the other end. It's like, that $6 coffee, or the guy that's got the $3,000 setup in his home. Well, that's part of it, but coffee culture is everywhere, and it's hugely prevalent in the whole Tim Hortons world. Like I said, there's nowhere in northern BC that you travel that there isn't a Tim Hortons, and everyone is in there. We did one job, and we were there for I think we were there for a month. So, except on the weekends, we would be in there every morning at 6:00 in the morning, and we, get our coffees and some donuts and, whatever we're going to get, our lunches. And by about into a week of it, all the guys, because there was guys already sitting in there drinking their coffee. It's like, hey, boys, how's it going? You going drilling today? They already knew that we were drilling and where we were drilling. And, we are. You got to come by, when you get days off. And super great people. But in there having coffee. And so I think sometimes we think, coffee culture is this hooty-tooty coffee culture, but it isn't. Tim Hortons and just your regular coffee shop and where people get together. My old man, just down the block where we lived, was the McDonald's, and he would go there every day for coffee. Every day.
Coffee house is supposed to be a place of community, right? Yeah. It's a place of gathering. That is like the origin of the coffee house.
Yeah. And like even tribal coffee, like the Turks and everybody, they gather around drinking coffee was a big thing. It was a social thing, right? So, I find that interesting, and I try to, because I do like good coffee, but I try to fight against that in the sense of it's all good culture. If your coffee culture is going to McDonald's every day to have coffee with your buddies, good. That's great. Who cares? If it's, I don't know how much coffee is at McDonald's, but the price shouldn't matter. It should be about the getting together and the hanging out. And I think that's a cool thing that coffee does. It's like, because, I don't know how many times in my life, and I'm sure in your life, and everyone around you, how, it's like, hey, you want to get together for a coffee? It's not like, do you want to get together for a tea or, maybe a drink? But yeah, it's like, I'll meet you for a coffee. We got something to talk about. Yeah, let's meet for a coffee. So it travels every level of the, let's go for a $10 cup of coffee today too.
Well, sometimes you want that $10 cup of coffee, right?
Yeah. And other times it's like, let's just go to Timmy's because I do need an apple fritter to go with my coffee.
Amen. I still love a caramel frappuccino.
Yeah, there you go. Care. So yeah, it's interesting. And in Vancouver too, like I said, I remember when it was, I don't know if it was pre, everything I judge in my life now is kind of pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, but just because it works, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I remember pre-pandemic, I was hanging out, I was paddling a lot, so I was down in like an English Bay Area and stuff, and I thought what was a really cool trend was like there was lots of little like coffee. Like carts, not even like truck, but carts, right?
Yeah.
And some of those guys were making great coffee, right? It was really, really good. And what I would do is I'd jump on the water to go paddle, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll be back in like half an hour dead on. Could you like have a coffee ready for me? And I'm like, paddle, come back, and there'd be my coffee ready for me. And then just, start chatting with the people that are there. But they were just little carts, like on, what do you call it? Like trikes, like the place. Yeah, crazy good. Crazy good. I don't know. I haven't seen too many of those around. I think, the pandemic kind of took a lot of businesses out, and they're slowly coming back, but it's hard for them to come back to, right? It's just like I don't know. I don't even know how much money they would make, but yeah, I remember there was a real trend with that, and then they were gone. I was like, oh, because it's there used to be one. I used to paddle like right out of Kitts.
Okay.
Like, so I'd start right at Kitts Beach, and then I'd paddle like to the top of the bay, and then come back. Right. So if it depends on how fast I wanted to go, but if I wanted to take breaks, a couple hours. But I'd go early in the morning, so I'd be on the water at like 6. But then every time I came back by like 8 or 9 o'clock, this guy in a coffee cart would be there. And I was like, I'm loving this, right? Get off the water. And, it might be a really warm day or it might be a little cool, right? And I'd be like, throw my board on the truck and have a coffee right here. I was like in heaven, right? And then the pandemic came and it all changed, That's the thing, it's like, it's whatever. It's a sad story, but like, with Harkin, right? I mean, it was like, it took a while for them to build it. And I don't know the details. I don't care. But it just, it opened up and it was just right on the verge of the pandemic. And then you guys opened up and I was like, oh, it's so awesome. Like, and it was just like, if people are listening, because I do actually have quite a few listeners from Vancouver. If you did have a chance to go there, it was like unreal coffee. But they had this great Japanese lady making like vegetarian brunches and all this stuff. It was just unreal. I was just like, I'm blown away. It was just like the food I loved, right? And then the freaking pandemic happened, and
I remember when we were going to open, and then we just had so many just delays, city delay, every kind of delay just hit us like over and over and over again. We had been ready, to open for for years. Like it felt like years.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, it's only going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah. I know. It was like, what?
This thing's only going to be 2 weeks. So we're like, okay, we're going to open. We're ready. Yeah. And then it was like the hardest 2 years of.
Yeah, it was like,
like to open a business. I've helped open a lot of coffee shops, and that was like.
And I've helped open a lot of businesses. And I know it was, and I didn't even have any part of it. And it was crushing to me.
It was just, you couldn't, and it was like every time something was going good, the pandemic got worse. Yeah. We had to
take out more chairs.
Take out more chairs. Yeah. It was already such a small, intimate space.
Yeah.
Small, intimate space. It's just like, it wasn't meant for social distancing. That was like not what it was built for. Social distancing was not supposed to be a thing, right? No. You were supposed to be able to sit next to one another and have a conversation with a stranger, or it was not supposed to be one of those places where you're scrolling and you're like, so
it was like you said, when I was told that it was kind of having to shut down, I'm not going to say I wasn't surprised, not because it wasn't great or anything, but there's just like the circumstances were just so hard, and and too, it's being a very specialty business. But you know what? It's like, them and so many businesses got hurt, so many businesses got closed, and now people are like, oh, it's coming back, but it's not coming back as much or as hard, because people now are very wary, because they're like, well, what if another pandemic happens? And you're 100% right. What if? But and if you have that thought in your mind, you can't open a business, because that's the only thought you'll have. And so the fear level will be like, well, we can't do this, right? Or, okay, we'll open a business and we'll design it to survive a pandemic. Well, that isn't a business that anyone wants to go to.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, so it created weird times, not just for Vancouver, the world.
For everybody.
For everyone, right? And it's just that I noticed it so much because like my podcast name, the Guy Vancouver, I love my city and I'm really involved in it. And it's not like, especially when I was drilling, I'd have weeks off at a time or months off. I'd usually get like months off, or I could take months off. So I would be everywhere in the city, and I remember, some people, whatever, they'd make a joke. It's like, oh yeah, you're everywhere, buddy. Like, yeah, well, I like going everywhere. Like, I hang out, there's friends of mine that own the pie shop, right? And so, man, for like 2 years, if you wanted to find me, I was there eating pie and drinking their coffee and, and hanging out all these great places. And then, the pandemic hurt, and it just hurt me so much. And not, it's just because I just loved my city and I loved all that aspect of it. And it has changed. It is coming back.
Mhm.
And, and certain people in business, they say, well, that's, it's good for business to clear out the people that can't survive. Yeah, I agree with that too. But in normal circumstances, that wasn't normal.
No, it wasn't normal.
It was crazy.
I mean, if you look at like the core people who worked at Harkin,
Yep.
they're all doing amazing. Well, Cooney works with me at Swiss Water, and Tomoko, who was our head chef, is now working at Annalena.
Yeah, which is an unreal
restaurant.
So good. And she's so good.
Right?
Yep.
And then, Eldrick, I think he may be working on a project at some point, but he just had a little baby girl.
Yep.
And Mark, he's doing his own thing. You think he's going into more like like film, right?
Yep.
So everybody's doing great.
Yeah.
It just... sometimes things just don't work out.
No, it'll be, it'll be interesting for everyone that lived through it, because again, when we were in it, we had so much time. I read up on the Spanish flu and stuff like that, and it took like from different places, but it took like 5 to 8 years for that whole feeling and everything to really be forgotten, right? Now, for us, it may be quicker, it might be longer because of the technology and media can always, again, already on the news, COVID rates are going up. Who cares? Cold rates are going up. Flu rates are going up. Just leave it. We've gotten our shots, but if you haven't gotten your shots, you're still alive. Just let it go. It's not a fucking news item anymore. Move fucking on, news people. Like, report on something better, right? But it will be interesting when, like my grandkids hang out in the studio when they get older and we talk about it, because they didn't understand it. They're just babies, right? They'll be like, wow, that's really weird. And it was. I remember one of the, again, I can say honestly, for me and my family, it all worked out good and there wasn't a lot of hardship. In fact, we all got together and said, okay, we're just sticking together. And everyone just came to my house and we barbecued, 3 or 4 times a week and just hung out. But I really did miss going to a coffee shop. And one day I had to go out. It was like mid shutdown of everything. And I'd go get something downtown, and I went downtown and I drove down Robson Street on a Saturday at 11 without a single person and all boarded up. And I was like, this is post-apocalyptic. It was bizarre. And it was super quiet. You could hear the birds and you could hear, so it's like, when we get to tell those stories, the kids won't believe it. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's not true. That didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, it's like, those, especially the 3 months that we were shut down. Mm-hmm. It was a movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was movie-esque, just every day barbecuing and sitting at home and, going to Safeway just once a week to buy all your groceries masked up, making sure you're really careful, Yeah, it was crazy. And two, it took out, I remember prior to that, there was way more coffee shops, and then a lot of them didn't make it, and then slowly they've been coming back, right?
Oh yeah, there's
780 of them now.
There's so many coffee shops, and it's really great to see, some of the good ones are still, a lot of them survived,
Yeah.
And
So long term, what are your goals? I mean, I know you're working for this company now, but do you have, any aspirations maybe to go back out to be roasting more for smaller people or something like that, or or you're just loving what you're doing right now and you're not worrying about it? You don't have to tell the secrets. Hopefully the company's not listening. Okay, if you're listening, Swiss Waters, this is the time to move on, okay? Go listen to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's really good, way better than my show.
I mean, obviously, I would like to roast again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know in what capacity yet. Maybe just kind of working on projects with friends or, smaller stuff like that. Yeah. Maybe, not full-time.
Yeah.
But I've got some projects coming up.
Cool.
So
Yeah, because I remember when you were working there, me and a buddy of mine were working at maybe doing some kind of coffee thing, but we're actually still looking at it because he's doing another thing. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I want to do, I want you to roast me a coffee. And I had like, the morning coffee is going to be called Morning Glory. That's a good name. And then the other one was going to be the campfire, right? For when you're out camping and stuff like that. But yeah, no, because like I said, I super enjoyed your coffee. It was one of the best coffees I'd drinking is when you were roasting there and making it. All the other guys are really good too, but yours was exceptional. But that was a pretty cool place.
It was a very cool place, a very special place.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely there will be things coming up.
Cool.
Little projects,
That's awesome.
little things. We'll see. I don't know if it'll be a full-time thing ever again. Because coffee is heavy. Coffee bags are heavy. And, I'm only getting older.
Only getting older every day.
And the coffee bags feel heavier and heavier.
You have to have little minions there.
Little minions.
Boys, give me that coffee bag. Don't you know I'm the queen of coffee? Bring me the bag. So.
I mean, when I started, I had to prove, right? Because it was one of the biggest questions I got asked when I was roasting. Because there weren't women roasting when I started roasting, and it was like, oh, well, can you lift 150 pounds?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this dude, and I'm like, can you lift 150 pounds, bro?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think, not consistently all day.
Not consistently.
Yeah.
So, like it was just such a big thing to prove that I could do it. And now I'm just like, no, you work smarter, not harder.
That's right.
So yeah, but definitely no. There will be things.
Well, it's been great having you on the Guy Vancouver podcast. Like I said, we've been trying for months and months to get together and just chat about coffee like we did, and coffee in Vancouver and coffee all over the world and the culture of it. And I'm going to have you back because like there's so much more to talk about coffee, and I wanted to talk more about like more food and coffee and like Vancouver, but like I said,
of course,
so much to talk about, and we'll have you back. I'd just like to thank everyone for again dropping in to listening to the Guy Vancouver. Don't forget, this is how it works. Follow me. Follow my podcast, download it, go to my social, the Guy Vancouver pod or the Guy Vancouver. Follow me. You'll love me. I got great pictures. You'll love me. And, drop me some lines. I already have some people asking me some questions, so it's excellent. Ask me anything, and I probably won't answer it. No, I will answer it on the next podcast. And again, I'd like to thank Get Ready Sound for doing such a great job of hosting us, and it's going to sound beautiful. Thanks so much, and have a great day.